It's Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by a Hall of Fame promoter, Frank Warren, although in relaxed mode by the look of it. Frank, how you doing?
Relaxed.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it.
How are you, Dan?
I'm good. You've obviously been very busy over the last few days, so you're allowed to chill out a bit now. We've seen the undercard announcements for Joyce Parker. Really good show. Obviously, it needs to be because it's on box office, but a deep, stacked card.
It is. It's good fights. There's something for everybody there. I mean, the main event, I think, speaks for itself. You know, the number 1 and 2 fighting. And I think what's so significant about the fight, besides the fact I think it's a really good quality heavyweight fight, is that what's happening in Saudi on Saturday, that the winner's going to have a major part in moving forward. They're going to become the mandatory.
Yeah, indeed. And just talking about how that fight came together, Joyce and Parker, we know it's a deal with BOXXER. It's going to be on BT Sport box office. I spoke to Adam Morley last week. He said if there's a rematch, which will only happen if Joe loses, that one will be on Sky. It seems like you guys are working together, you and Ben Shalom, or you and BOXXER. How did that kind of come about, and can we expect more of it?
Well, he managed to get involved with Parker, and that's how it came about. We wanted to make the fight. But Dan, I mean, you've been around a long time. We work with everybody. I mean, on this show, for example, Lou DiBella, we got Kakashi fighting Anthony Kakashi fighting Michael Magneri for the IBO title. He's with Lou. Promoter, we're working with him. We're working with Jake Paul, with Amanda Serrano. And so that's nothing unusual. That's nothing unusual. Contrary to what the narrative that people put out, I've been doing this for many, many years. I don't just do shows on my own. You have to work with other people. The only trouble we've had in the past in working with anybody was when Matchroom were at Sky. I mean, they didn't want to know, and that's up to them. That's their choice. But you know, we probably missed out on a few good fights as a result of that. But it's all water under the bridge. It's gone, and we just keep moving forward.
Talking of Matchroom, there have been a few mischief makers out there who've seen the two major TV boxing promoters in this country work together on Joyce Parker and say, is there an element where you're trying to freeze Matchroom and freeze the zone out of the market a little bit?
Not at all. From my perspective, all I care about is what we do as a business for our fighters and for Queensberry and for BT. That's how it always is. I'm not interested in that nonsense. I don't think there's any love lost between what happened with the Zone and Eddie Hearn and Sky. I mean, and that's why they probably put all this money they put up to get the fight on Saturday. I mean, they paid a lot of money for that fight. So that is what it is. But, I haven't got time for that bullshit. Life's too short. And all we want to do is what we always do, which is deliver for our fighters. Whatever it takes, we will do to make it work.
Could you ever see yourself doing a similar type of thing with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, or would that be a lot more difficult?
I don't know. It won't be if it stood up for us and it was to the advantage of my fighter, I'd do it. But it's got to be to the advantage of my fighter. I'm not going to do it for somebody else's business. I mean, we tried to make a few fights, didn't we? We tried to put the fight together with Zach Parker, and at the time went with Nigel Benn's son, with
Conor Benn.
With Conor, and we couldn't get that together. We tried to do quite a few fights, but it never's going to work out because I genuinely believe they think that a couple of fights we put to them, that our fighters would probably win the fights. And obviously, from my perspective, the fights that I put to them, obviously fights that I felt my guys would win. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing that.
No, that's fair enough. One of the things that also struck me about the card is that you've got Serrano fighting against Mahfoud, which is a really, really good fight. Raven Chapman's on the show as well. There was no link between Queensberry and female boxing for a few years since Nicola Adams retired, and now you're back in a big way. Was that like a conscious decision?
I met with Raven, and I quite liked her. You got to like the people you work with, and actually her debut, albeit it was very short, she actually shapes up and looked well in the ring. George, my son George, he did the deal with Nikisa and with Jake Paul's team regarding Serrano, and it's a good, I think looking at it from a business perspective, I think it's a really good mix. They get on very well together, and they, obviously in the past we did the fights with Tommy, and we're trying to get that, and hopefully we can resurrect that. So I just like to keep that connection going. I love Jake Paul. I know everybody goes on, you know, all they got all their views. I just think, and I'm wearing a promoter's hat, I think he's a brilliant promoter. He's a brilliant promoter. He gets it. He understands it. He may say things, I suppose, that, you know, in my time, early days of boxing or last few years, you would say, well, that's a bit strong. But I get it and I understand it. And I'll tell you what he does. He gets involved. He's not like, you know, the fight's done and then goodbye and we'll see you later until the night. And he actually does get involved and promote it. So I've got a lot of time for him. And he's, look, you know, he's not fought anybody of any significance yet. I'm sure he will do. And I want to try and still do this fight with him and Tommy because I think it's a big fight for them two guys at the level it's at. And I'm not going to, you know, go crazy about that. You know, we all know what it is. I'm not going to bullshit everybody, but I think it's a good fight and it's a fight that people gain interest. But I quite like Jake. I think Jake's got his head screwed on really well and he's got a good team around him.
So he's smart, he's outspoken, he's a bit of a rebel, he's trying to overturn the established order. Does he remind you of anyone? I'm intrigued.
I couldn't tell you.
You mentioned Tommy Fury there and perhaps resurrecting that fight. What's the latest with Tommy, obviously, after the problems he had getting over to the US?
Well, I've got to be honest, I've not had a chance to sit down and talk to him. You know, I went away for a couple of weeks and now the dust has settled. I think we'll be getting together, having a good chat next week and see what the next move is. But we want to do this fight and we've got to work our way around how we can achieve that. But we do want to make this fight happen. I want to make it happen for Tommy. Two reasons. One, you know, I think he can win the fight. And two, financially, it'll secure him. He's going to get a big payday for it. So we've got to make it work.
Now, another fight that we were told not long ago was almost confirmed, but it's gone a bit quiet since, is Anthony Yarde's challenge to Artur Beterbiev. What's the latest on that?
Well, you know, we're hearing that Artur's injured. The fight's done. We've agreed the terms. It's all done. So we're just waiting for some confirmation as to when he will be available. And I hope we get that done in the next 4 or 5 days. That's been the hold-up. The fight's done. You know, everybody's hot to trot. Again, working with another promoter in Top Rank, as we always do, with making these big fights happen. And, you know, I'm looking forward to that. That's a cracker of a fight. That is a really, really good fight. Styles make fights. And the styles in that fight will blend and gel. And that's going to be something special to watch.
And that's all done. That's for London?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're just waiting on a date depending on his injury.
Correct.
How are things between you and Bob now? Obviously, you're still working with Top Rank, so they must be pretty good.
Well, I'm not got a problem with him. You know, we work, we do lots of stuff together. You know, I've worked with him for my first world title fight in 1985. So that's 37 years ago. So that's a long time ago. But yeah, look, whatever it takes to make the business work, and he's the same. Whatever it takes, we do, and we get it over the line.
Great stuff. Good to hear. Now, you mentioned Conor Benn briefly earlier. That fight that we've talked about before with him and Chris Eubank Jr., but it's now been formally announced for October. What do you make of it? Were you surprised that they finally got it over the line?
Well, I mean, look, I'm an outsider looking in, and you know, I don't want to be poking my nose in everybody's business. That's, you know, I know other people do that, but I'm not really that interested. But look, if you took out the facts who their fathers were, it's two guys who, one at 33 years of age he's not done what you would have thought a fighter would have done by the age of 33. He's not won a world title. His father, in fact, had 20 odd world title fights by then and had retired. Conor's done extremely well for himself, but he's fought at a level. He's not jumped up at a level at all. So really, it's two Brits. It's not the two best Brits in their weight division, but people will buy into it because of the history of the family and everything. The way I look at it is that this weight thing, and I don't know, I'm sure the Boxing Board of Control, I hope they get on top of this, because I don't know whether it's true or not that he can't weigh more than 12 stone 2 on the day of the fight. I don't know how true that is. This is a guy who's been a super middleweight for God knows how long. He's never made that weight in God knows how many years on the scales for the fight. That, to me, is, especially when a fighter gets older and it's more difficult to make weight, I find that as a bit scary in some ways. You know, most of the injuries in boxing through dehydration. That's how most of them happen. For Conor jumping up, giving weight away, the other side of it, you can look at that and think, what's going on. But look, these two fellas, they're going to train their balls off. There's a lot of pride at stake, and I'm sure whatever it is, it's going to be. But the bottom line of all of it is it's all about the fathers, isn't it? That's really what it's about. If it weren't for that, it would be, you'd say, that's a decent domestic bust-up. But that's what it'd be. That's what it'd be. So what do I think of it? I mean, the big and normally would beat the little one, but the weight thing's going to be the interesting scenario. That's going to be the interesting thing to see where they get with that. In my opinion, I just want the ball to be on top of it. It's gone under the radar. The ball had to settle a big case over a boxer's welfare recently, which seems to have gone under the radar for like 1.5, 2 million quid, so I'm being told, allegedly. So we can't have any more screw-ups like that just because somebody gets it in their head. This is, the thing to do. And the comparison, I know there's been this comparison banging about Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker. I mean, Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker have extremely great pedigrees. Former world champion, Olympic silver medalist, undefeated. One's number one, number's two. And as you said earlier, the weekend, whoever wins that fight, that's the mandatory. So you can't compare them from that perspective. You can't. I'm talking about at a level. Their level is far above the level that Conor and Chris Jr.'s boxing at. Far above that level, irrespective. And I don't care if it pisses people off and whatever, but you can't compare the levels at all.
Good stuff. Now, I want to ask you about the Usyk-Joshua rematch, as I'm sure you're not surprised as it's this Saturday. But before I do, Tyson Fury hovers like a particularly tall ghost over all of these proceedings. How seriously should we take his retirement and comeback announcements now?
Look, Tyson is his own man. No one controls him. He does what he wants to do. Me, as how I know him and knowing the type of person he's a fighting man, I believe he will fight the winner. I do believe that. I may be wrong, but I do believe he will. And he should fight the winner. He's at the peak of his powers, and the winner and him is a unification, and it makes a lot of sense, and it'd be a big money fight for both of the guys. So why wouldn't you do that? I keep saying I wouldn't hate to come back in 2 years' time when you take all that time out. You're not the same guy you were. No matter what anybody says, I want him to, if he fight his best or retire. But I believe he'll fight, and I think this weekend's going to be quite exciting. I've got to tell you, your former magazine, Boxing News, they give it a 4-star rating, and this is the opposition. This is not me. They give it. How can that not be a 5-star fight? How can it not be a 5-star fight? And then they devote I think it's 24 or 25 pages to reviewing the whole fight out of a 40, I think, and call it. I don't know what you got to do with that. I mean,
6 pages per star.
Sorry, mate.
6 pages per star.
Well, it's a joke, isn't it? And the only reason I mention that, because you've mentioned Tyson and what's his name? The guy there, one of the guys that Elliot Worst was saying had this, he talked about a show I put on a few years ago at the Excel when Tyson fought Derek Chisora.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
You actually, I know you was there. You gave it a 4-star preview, and it was a really good fight. And the undercard was really good. You had Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank Jr. got beat.
Yeah.
Frankie Gavin in with Bradley Skeet, and there was a real good undercard. And he slagged it off something terrible. And I know we had problems in the crowd, but that weren't down to us. That was down to the security of the XL, which we dealt with. Weren't huge problems, but there were some problems there. They were dealt with. But the fight card was a great card, and Chisora's on it. And you look, and he was slagging off Tyson fighting Chisora, which he's entitled to his opinion, and really talks about this night. Talk about people taking cocaine there and God. I mean, it's just like, what is this bullshit you're talking about? And then I'm thinking, 2 fights ago, who was Usyk in the ring with?
Yeah, Chisora.
Yeah. So what planet are all these guys on? I don't get it. And let me say, and this is the same magazine. I'm going to get my magazine shit out of the way.
Go for it.
It's the same magazine that makes Usyk the best pound for pound or best heavyweight fighter in the world. 2 fights ago, he's fighting Chisora. He's now the best heavyweight. What? I mean, what logic is there in that? What logic? Any logic in that?
I will ask Matt Christie next time I speak to him. I mean,
and they talk about being honest. All that stuff we had. I'm going to get this off my chest because I'm in a getting it off my chest move. I look at that stuff. You know what they did at Wembley about us putting people up in the gods and all that. And Daily Mail didn't get it. Daily Mail had 2 tickets in the front row, 2 press tickets in front. He was in the press room like he is most of the time he goes to the States or boxing news going, and they report from that, as you know, from a higher position. They were in the press box at Wembley where all the British football or English football press report on the English football matches. Same position. And they got a monitor, so they're watching what you're watching at home.
Mm.
And he couldn't report on the undercard because he was up in the box. Yet he does go to America, up in the gods, as he calls it, and they report. I find the whole thing dishonest. And Elliot, a few weeks ago, was talking about fighters being liars. Before you start calling fighters liars, tell the truth yourself.
Fair enough. Strong words, as I would expect.